This is Fearful Frequencies. This story is called The Hollow Crown. The moon hung low over the hills surrounding Dunwyn Keep, casting an eerie glow over the crumbling battlements. Princess Elira adjusted her velvet cloak as the autumn wind bit at her skin, her gaze fixed on the lonely forest that stretched beyond the castle walls. The trees there seemed unnaturally still, their shadows long and twisting in the pale light. Beside her, Prince Alric, her betrothed, followed her gaze with an easy smile. "You have stared at those woods every night since I arrived," he said. "Are you searching for something? Or perhaps someone?" Elira forced a smile. "The woods frighten me, that is all. My father says they are cursed." Alric chuckled softly. "Every kingdom has its tales. Ghosts in the woods, monsters in the hills. They keep children in their beds and give bards their bread. There is no truth to them." But Elira did not answer. The forest had unnerved her since she was a child. It was not the tales of witches or wolves that haunted her, but the silence. The woods had no bird song, no rustling leaves, no sound at all except for an occasional low, rhythmic hum that could be heard on moonless nights. No hunter dared enter, and the few who did never returned. The betrothal feast that night was lavish, but Elira could not shake her unease. The great hall was filled with the laughter of nobles, the clinking of goblets, and the sweet strains of minstrels. Yet her attention kept drifting to the tall windows, where the shadows of the forest seemed to shift and writhe. When the feast ended, Alric took her hand. "Come," he said, "walk with me a while. You look as though you've seen a ghost." They strolled through the empty halls of the keep, their footfalls echoing against the cold stone. Alric spoke of the future, of their wedding, the uniting of their kingdoms, and the children they might have. But Elira's thoughts remained on the forest. As they passed an ancient tapestry depicting the founding of Dunwyn, a shadow moved at the edge of her vision. She stopped, her breath catching in her throat. "Did you see that?" she whispered. Alric frowned. "See what?" "There, by the tapestry, something moved." Alric approached the tapestry and swept it aside, revealing nothing but a bare stone wall. "There is nothing here, Elira," he said, though his voice was tight. Elira turned away, but she could feel it now, an oppressive weight in the air, a coldness that seeped into her bones. That night she dreamed of the forest. She stood at its edge, the trees looming above her like sentinels. The low hum filled the air, rising and falling like a heartbeat. Something moved between the trunks, quick fleeting shapes that seemed to watch her. She tried to run, but her legs would not obey. The shadows crept closer, their forms becoming clearer. They were human, or at least they had been once. Their faces were gaunt, their eyes empty sockets, their mouths stretched into unnatural grins. When she awoke, her room was dark, and the hum from her dream lingered in the air. She sat up, her heart racing, and lit a candle. The flame flickered weakly, barely illuminating the space. She froze. In the corner of her room, where the shadows pooled deepest, stood a figure. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice trembling. The figure did not move, but she could feel its eyes on her, cold, hungry, inhuman. Then, as the candle flickered again, it was gone. Elira confided in Alric the next day, though she hesitated to speak of the figure. "I dreamed of the forest," she said, "and I heard the hum. It was as though the woods were alive, watching me." Alric listened patiently, but his expression was unreadable. When she finished, he said, "Dreams are born of fear and stories, nothing more. The woods are no different than any other, just trees and shadows." But Elira could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands tightened into fists. He was hiding something. That evening, Elira decided to visit the keep's library. The room was vast, its shelves filled with tomes so old their spines crumbled at a touch. She searched for anything that might explain the forest or the hum. Finally, she found an ancient journal written by a long-dead knight of Dunwyn. The hum grows louder with each passing night. The trees whisper to each other, though I do not know their tongue. Sir Gavric entered the forest yesterday, claiming he would slay whatever devil lurks there. He has not returned. We told the king, but he only muttered of an ancient bargain and forbade us to speak of it again. Elira's hands trembled as she turned the pages. The final entry was brief. I saw them tonight, the hollow ones. They came to the keep, their forms like shadows, their faces void of life. They whispered my name in voices that were not human. I fear we have angered the forest, and it will not rest until it has claimed us all. Elira slammed the book shut. The hum was real. The hollow ones were real, and they were coming. Elira barely slept that night, the night's words echoing in her mind. She sat by her window, staring at the forest as the hum rose faintly in the distance. It was not just her imagination. The sound grew louder, a steady rhythmic vibration that seemed to resonate in her chest. By dawn, she resolved to confront her father. King Aldred was seated in the throne room, his expression weary. He looked older than his years, the weight of the crown etched into the lines of his face. "Father," she began, "what is the truth of the forest? Why does it hum? What are the hollow ones?" The king's face darkened. "Who told you of such things?" "I read it in a journal. The knight wrote of an ancient bargain, of creatures that came to the keep. I need to know what it means." Aldred sighed heavily and gestured for the guards to leave. When they were alone, he spoke. "The forest is cursed, as you have always known, but it is more than that. Long ago, before Dunwyn was built, the land belonged to the Hollow Ones, spirits of shadow, neither alive nor dead. My ancestors struck a bargain with them. They would cede the woods in exchange for the safety of the keep. But the bargain was broken." "Broken how?" Elira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The knights grew bold and hunted the Hollow Ones, seeking to destroy them. Instead, they awoke their wrath. Since then, the forest has been a place of death, and the hum is their warning. When it grows loud enough to be heard in the keep, it means they are coming." Elira's blood ran cold. "Coming for what?" "For retribution. For us." That evening, Elira begged Alric to leave with her. "We must go tonight," she pleaded. "If we stay, the Hollow Ones will take us." But Alric shook his head. "You are frightened, and understandably so, but abandoning your home will not save us. Whatever comes, we will face it together." Elira wanted to believe him, but as night fell, the hum grew louder. It filled the keep, vibrating through the stone walls. The torches sputtered and went out one by one, leaving only darkness. In the great hall, the courtiers gathered in fearful clusters. The king stood at the head of the room, his sword drawn. "Do not fear," he declared. "We are protected here. They cannot cross the threshold." As if in answer, the main doors creaked open. A cold wind rushed in, extinguishing the last of the candles. The hum became deafening, a terrible pulsating sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. And then they appeared. They poured into the hall like liquid shadows, their forms shifting and twisting. Their faces were empty voids, and their limbs moved unnaturally, bending in ways that defied logic. The courtiers screamed and fled, but the Hollow Ones moved faster, their elongated arms stretching to catch them. Elira clung to Alric, her heart pounding. "We have to run!" But Alric did not move. He stared at the Hollow Ones, his expression unreadable. "No," he said softly. "It is too late." "What are you talking about?" she demanded, pulling at his arm. Alric turned to her, and for the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. "I broke the bargain." Her blood turned to ice. "What?" "I entered the forest," he admitted. "I thought I could find a way to end the curse, to destroy them once and for all. But I failed. They followed me back. Elira stared at him in disbelief. "You knew this would happen, and you still brought them here." "I thought I could protect you," he cried. "I thought I could fix it before it was too late." Before she could respond, the Hollow Ones surrounded them. One reached for Alric, its shadowy hand passing through his chest. He gasped, his body convulsing as the light drained from his eyes. In an instant, he was gone, his form dissolving into smoke. Elira screamed as the Hollow Ones turned their attention to her. But instead of taking her, they stopped, their empty faces tilting as if studying her. One stepped closer, and she braced for the end. Instead, it whispered her name. When Elira awoke, the great hall was empty. The hum was gone, and the first rays of dawn filtered through the shattered windows. She stumbled to her feet, her mind racing. The Hollow Ones had spared her, but why? As she wandered the keep, she found no one. The courtiers, the servants, even her father, all were gone. Only their clothes remained, strewn across the floor like discarded shells. She returned to her chambers and found a mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and hollow-eyed. But as she leaned closer, she saw movement behind her, a shadow that did not belong. It smiled, its mouth stretching wider and wider until it consumed her image entirely. And then she understood. She was not spared. She was claimed. The hum returned that night, louder than ever. Elira stood at the edge of the forest, her bare feet sinking into the cold earth. The Hollow Ones waited for her among the trees, their forms blending with the shadows. She stepped forward, and they welcomed her as one of their own. And now this broadcast has come to an end. If you enjoy these stories and want to support Fearful Frequencies, subscribe on Patreon at patreon.com/fearfulfrequencies. Link in description. So in the dead of night, when the world is silent and shadows grow long, there are frequencies that tap into our deepest fears. Tune in if you dare, and let the whispers of the unknown send chills down your spine. But beware, once you hear the haunting echoes of these tales, you may never listen to the silence the same way again.